Good evening. You have your Bible with you tonight. Turn with you real to the book of Acts. Book of Acts. Chapter 27. Get there if we're going to stand. I'm going to do things a little different tonight. I do that from time to time. Acts 27 and verse 1. And when it was determined that we should sail into Italy, they delivered Paul and certain other prisoners unto one named Julius, a centurion of Augustus' band. Father, we thank you today for you bless us, Lord. Have your way tonight. Use your word, the reading of it, the presentation of it, Lord, in accordance to your will. Touch hearts. Help us that we might understand. We might lean on the truth herein. And be obedient to it in our lives. In Jesus' precious holy name we pray. Amen. I really just want to kind of go through this slowly, reading it as such, and kind of give some captions on it. There's some few points that I really want to bring out. We are, let me say where we're at. We have come to the book of Acts and have seen the early church grow, and then we have switched from looking into the life of Stephen and then into the life of Philip, and from there we went into the life of Saul. Earlier before that, we saw Peter and John, some of the things that were going on with them. And pretty much I stayed with the life of Paul, and to the entirety of the rest of the book. And we have this chapter, the next chapter, and Acts is done. And so we've been following the ministry of, and we watched Paul go on his first missionary journey, then on his second missionary journey, and then on his third missionary journey. And I told you, though it's not usually described this way, but I kind of see where he's at is on his fourth missionary journey, where he before he was going to the peoples, now he's going to those who are in charge, the kings and governors and the like. He was kept in Caesarea for 2 years under Festus there, under Felix there for 2 years, and when he left the governorship and another took his place, Festus came in. He had able to witness to Festus, he was able to witness to Agrippa, and now having appealed to Rome again, he's fit to be shipped off. I noticed something in this first verse, and let me kind of bring this out to your attention, that it says in the latter part, that the latter half, they deliver Paul and certain other prisoners, so he's not only the prisoner that's there, but certain other prisoners, unto one named Julius, a centurion of Augustus' band. I know that name, Augustus, because the man who's on the throne, the Caesar on the throne in Rome right now, is Augustus. And so my thought is this man, for whatever reason, was in Caesarea, is on his way back to Rome, because that's where he is stationed. He's a part of the band that is there in Rome, Augustus' band. He's a centurion which makes him a commander over 100 men, so I assume he has 100 men with him. That would be my assumption. And he has picked up Paul and some other prisoners that were in Caesarea that are all going to Rome. So in verse 2 it comes in, it says, entering into a ship of Adramyttia. Now I don't know if you can pronounce it better than I can or not. But anyway, Adramyttium is a city, by the way, in the Asia, what we called at one time Asia Minor, that section that is now modern day Turkey, that western area. The 7 churches of Asia that are talked about in Revelation are below it. It's above Pergamos, just south of Troas, just right there close to where it would be Mysia instead of Asia, that little division. And that ship is from that city. So again, draw conclusions. It's probable the ship he's getting onto is going back to that city. Just you'll understand why I'm assuming that here in a minute. And entering to a ship of Adramyttium, we launched, meaning to sail the coast of Asia. One Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, being with us. Paul mentions him in another place as well. And if you note, the writing there says that he's with us. That's Luke writing. So again, assuming, because it says nothing else, that it's Paul and Luke and Aristarchus. Those 3 are on the ship together as a group, Paul being the only prisoner. And you'll see why that, I'm assuming that in the text. And the next day we touched at Sidon. Now Sidon is just north of Caesarea. So as you leave Caesarea, they're a coastal city, and as you go up, you hit Sidon. From Sidon to Maya, which if you were looking on a map, I don't know if you've got a map in your Bible or not. I've got one in mine on the next page. But if you were to draw a line from Sidon to Maya, where they're going, we'll find out being here in a little bit, you can almost draw a straight line under Cyprus. Now I'm stressing that word under Cyprus here in a minute. But if you have a map in your Bible, more than likely they show the trail taking them above Cyprus. And I'm going to explain that here in a minute too. Yours does, huh? Mine does too. And so here it goes. And Julius courteously entreated Paul and gave him liberty to go to his friends to refresh himself. So already Paul is seeing some liberty. And no doubt, I'm assuming when he was turned over to Julius, that the captain of the guard that has kept him at Caesarea for probably closer to, we may have pushed 3 years, at least 2.5, I would think, because he was 2 years there under Felix. Has kept him all his time, says, by the way, he's no problem. You know, he's a good guy, don't have to worry about him much. And so when they got to Sidon, he said, you know, Paul, you can go spend some time with Luke and Aristarchus, it'll be fine. And so that's, that he'd gone to sit with them to refresh himself. And in verse 4, and when we had launched from thence, we sailed under Cyprus because the winds were contrary. Now, I want you to understand, we're going to have a notation here in a minute, this chapter, about the time of year that we're coming into. We're in the fall of the year. And what I'm told in my notes there in my Bible is that there is a northwesterly wind that becomes the prevailing wind across the Mediterranean during this time of year. That northwesterly wind, if you look at that line you would have drawn from Sidon to Maya, is a northwesterly direction. The reason why your map shows them sailing above Cyprus instead of under Cyprus is what they say, what they mean is that it's under the leeward side. In other words, under the protection of the leeward side of Cyprus, which would have taken them above the island to allow the wind, that's a northwesterly flow coming down, from driving the ship back to Sidon instead of them going to. That's the reason why your map shows it the way it does. It's confusing to me to assume that be the case, but that's what they say. But nonetheless, you understand that already as they start out, as they're beginning to push off here in the fall of the year, oh, it's fall already, isn't it? That they're already having problems. The winds are already against them, if you will. By the way, let me make a comment here. I think it's imperative. as we look at this, to remember that God told Paul, you will stand before governors and before kings. That God told Paul, after you go to Jerusalem, you'll go to Rome. If anybody else doesn't make it, Paul's going to wind up in Rome. The ship sinks, Paul still winds up in Rome. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? God has set a course for Paul's life, Paul in agreement with that course. And God has set a course for Paul's life, and no matter what happens, Paul's going to Rome. The wind could be against him. Paul's going to Rome. Verse 5. When he had sailed over the sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, and understand those are coastal cities of Asia on the lower side of Galatia, so you kind of get an understanding that it sounds like they went over Cyprus. We came to Myra, a city of Lycia. And there the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing into Italy, and he put us therein. We switched ships in Myra. Alexandria, if you're aware, is a city in Egypt. It's named after Alexander the Great. And so this ship apparently is an Egyptian ship that is in Myra on its way to Italy, and this other ship is not quite going to Italy, it's probably going to Adramyttium, is that what it was? So he switched ships here at Myra. Verse 7, and when we had sailed slowly many days, and scarce were come over against Cnidus, the wind not suffering us, we sailed under Crete over against Salmon. Salmon, maybe. If you look at your map, if you've got one in your Bible, if you were to find Myra and you were to find Cnidus, at best, it's a 2-day trip by ship. From what I remember coming down the coastal line when he was coming back to Caesarea before going to Jerusalem, that there were little jumps that he was making. That would have been about basically a day at a time. This, he's taking them 3 days to do what they should have done in a day, probably. In a long day, but a day. Taking them 3 days to do it. And understand too that we're talking about not that they can course, so we're trying to make a steady course for 3 days. 3 24-hour periods. And we're not making it. We're pushing hard against the winds, and the winds are prevailing against the ship. The ship just isn't making any headway. So Paul is going to Rome. And hardly, verse 8, hardly passing it, came into a place which is called the Fair Havens, which nigh unto the city of Lacia. Now where they're at, this is the island of Crete where Titus is sent to, and so we come down this area of what we call Asia there, where I'm good at based on my mind is visual. If I can turn it around, I don't know if I can or not. Here, Asia, and down here at the base of what would be the Adriatic Sea is Crete. And they've gone down underneath it. Fair Havens is a port about halfway across the island, which the island is very small, but is a port halfway across the island, and so they're at Fair Havens. Now, when much time was spent and when sailing was now dangerous, it's already gotten past the point of where you should be out there on the sea kind of thing. Because the fast now already passed, Paul admonished them. The statement of the fast is an event in Jerusalem that kind of marks the time of year we're in. So he's talking about the fast in that regard of being past. So therefore, we're late in the year. We're pushing into the late to the fall. And he says in verse 10, and when they and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. Now listen. Paul was a prisoner on the ship. Paul has not been arrested for crimes done at sea. He has not been a sailor, okay? His trade before, as such, besides being a Pharisee, he was a tent builder, not a sailor. So when Paul gets up and says, hey, I perceive that this journey we're about to take is going to be with much hurt and damage. Not just of the ship and the lading, but listen, what Paul's telling them is that we should stop here for the winter. We should go no further. Just because you are a sailor don't mean you know more about sailing sometimes. Sometimes you should stop and listen. Verse 11, nevertheless, the centurion believed the master of the owner, and the owner of the ship, more than those things which were spoken by Paul. I would tend to understand why. After all, he is the professional here. It is his ship. He wouldn't want to lose it. I can understand why, though this time it's not necessarily a good idea. Verse 12, because the haven was not commodious to winter in. It didn't have the adequate needs, if you will, that to stay there. The more part advised to depart thence, if by any means they might attain at Phoenice, and I understand that possibly to be Phoenix is our more modern day spelling of that. Is the name of the town that's on the island. And there to winter, which is in haven of Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and northwest. It's on the more on the end of the island. And it was apparently a better place to stay. It's a problem. You set sail, you should have stayed in Fair Havens. Verse 13, and when the south wind blew softly. Got a south wind. Remember a while ago we had a northwest wind. We got a south wind that's going to help drive us up towards Phoenix. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had attained their purpose, loosing thence, they sailed close by Crete, staying close to the shore. But not long after there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. Euro meaning that it's coming from Europe. And it's a strong wind. It's strong enough. It's strong enough and often enough that it has its own name. Kind of like the Alberta clippers we get every once in a while come down through Tennessee. Every once in a while you'll have this quick moving front that drops the temperature behind it, and it just moves quickly in the wintertime. We call them Alberta clippers. They have a Euroclydon. And when the ship was caught and could not bear up into the wind, we let her drive. In other words, the wind has its way. That's all I can do. My map shows them going towards Phoenix, and then it shows them going the complete opposite direction, basically. They're going down, south. In verse 16, and running under a certain island which is called Clauda, we had much work to come by the boat. They're fighting this thing as best they can. Which when they had taken up, they used helps, undergirding the ship, and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksands, straight sail so were driven. And we being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, the next day they lightened the ship, And the third day we cast out our own hands, the tackling of the ship. And we neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest laid on us. All hope that we should be saved was taken away. You understand what's happened? We are just going to go on this little island, from Fair Havens to Phoenix. It's a little trip. Wouldn't even take a full day to get there. With that southerly wind that started up. Before they got very far, Euroclydon kicked in and drove them south. And they're fighting the winds and the storms and the sea and the quicksands that it mentions, and other obstacles that are in the way. They're fighting hard to try to turn their ship, but they're not heading the direction they want to go. The wind is driving them. And they really don't, at this point, not having seen the sun or stars in many days, they don't know where they are. That's how they were sailing, by the stars and by the sun, and they don't know where they're at. But I want you to understand something. Wherever they're at, Paul is going to run. Verse 21. But after long absence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. By the way, if you recall, the Layton's pretty well been thrown over at this point already. The tackling, the other stuff they needed to help with the ship, its weight, it's a problem. They got rid of it too. But you're not going to die. The ship's not going to last very much longer, but you're not going to die. Verse 23, For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar. Paul, you're going to Rome. And lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that it shall be even as it was told me. Howbeit, we must be cast upon a certain island. Listen, you know that here Paul is given a prophecy. He said, we're going to, no loss of life, the ship is gone, we're going to lose the ship, but everybody's going to survive, and we're going to be put on an island. Verse 27, but when the 14th night was come, 14 nights, 14 days, to give you an idea, we're fighting, they're worn out by this time, 2 weeks fighting this wind and storm. As we were driven up and down in Adria, about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's different ways in which people will realize they're getting close to land. One of the things they can do sometimes is hear birds off in the distance. They know they're close to land if they hear birds. They also sometimes can hear the waves crashing against rocks. And I think that's maybe what they're hearing here. Verse 28, and sounded, They put forth a noise as such to kind of judge the echo, the return sound. They're basically using sonar, okay? And sounded and found it 20 fathoms. When they had gone a little further, they sounded again and found it 15 fathoms. And I just realized something that I didn't realize when I was reading before. They're judging the depth of the ocean at this point. And a fathom is about 6 foot. I don't know how big the ship is, but by the way, there's 276 people in this ship. So it's not small. And you'll see in a minute there's 276. And if it's going from 20 fathoms to 15 fathoms, it's rising pretty quick. Then veering, verse 29, lest we should have fallen upon the rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, when they had let down the boat into the sea, under color, that is to say under pretense or show, as though they would have cast anchors out of the foreship, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, we cannot be saved. We're not shipmen here. And if the shipmen, the sailors leave, we're at the mercy of the sea. And then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall off. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, this day is the 14th day, and ye have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. Wherefore I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health, and for there shall not an hair fall from the head of any of you. And when he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. What little bit's left is a little food. Paul says, listen guys, this is the 14th day. We need to eat. We need the strength. This is for your health. I note here that at this point, the guy in chains is the guy in charge. I'm assuming he's in chains, okay? But the guy in chains is the guy in charge. The prisoner is running the prison ship here. He told the centurion, listen, guy, if these guys in the boat, we're done for. So they stop them from leaving the boat. Then he says, listen, we need to eat. And he takes and blesses the food in the presence of them all, and breaks it and begins to eat, and they all begin to eat with him. So who's in charge here? Is it the centurion? Is it the owner of the ship? Who's in charge? By the way, Paul's going to Rome. Verse 36, then were all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. And we were all in the ship 216 souls, or 276 people in the ship. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. We eat what's left, we take the rest off and throw it overboard. We need this ship to be as light as possible. And when it was dry day, they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore, in the which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. They have in their mind the idea that the shore's going up here, the shore's going up there, but at this creek, there should be a little bit deeper area. We can just plunge the ship into this deep area. We'll be right there at the land. Oh wait, the boat, they don't have a boat anymore. It got cut loose because they're trying to escape, save their own lives. Verse 40, when they had taken up the anchors, and they committed themselves into the sea, and loosed the rudder bands, and hoisted up the mainsail in the wind, and made toward shore, and falling into a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the fore part stuck fast, and the remaining unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim out and escape. But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they which could swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get to land, and the rest should on boards and on some broken pieces of the ship. And so they came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. The ship has been thrust into this place. The waves are still violent. And the front part's it's held fast with the land itself. The back part is broken off. The ship is gone. It's destroyed. They're still not on land. They make their way and jump into the sea, and those who could swim, swam, and those who couldn't used other flotation devices that were available to them, namely the parts of the ship. The Bible says in verse 1 of 28, and when they were escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita. I understand it to be the same as Malta, which is down at the base below Sicily, which is below Italy. Did I mention that Paul's going to Rome? All the winds and the storms and the waves, all the ignorance of men will not stop that. God has a plan. Paul has a purpose. And nothing that Satan throws at him can stop that. That sink in a little bit. God has a plan. We have a purpose. And nothing that Satan does can stop that. Let's get a song here.